And so you missed it. I'm sorry. Since this is being recorded, this is probably like the 27th best workshop on emotional sobriety. But I'm gonna talk a little bit really about where I came from and what I walked in with. That has a lot to do with emotional sobriety and the tools we have. And as far as Bill's writing and some other things I often look at, I think, a lot of people get confused about what emotional sobriety is. So, the opposite of sobriety obviously is inebriation. So emotional inebriety, or, what we're looking for is emotional wellness, like Bill was talking about in that writing about how to function in this world and not be dragged down by our own attitudes, our own beliefs, our false ideas. And these are false beliefs and ideas about things and other people, and that kind of thing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What I want to talk to you a little bit about, the family I grew up in was a big Irish Catholic family. There's a lot of violence there. So I'm just going to cover this really quickly and get into what we're doing. But what I walked in here with was the tools for dealing with my environment and people around me was with violence, with anger, with rage. It seemed to be where if anything came up, that was always my response. It was a way to create safety and security in my life. And I'm not a big guy or anything. I was just a short little Irish kid, but we were scrappers, and my brothers trained me from the age of 4 on that you hit twice and twice as hard. And they would tell me to go beat up people. And if I didn't, they would beat me up. So I had no choice, I felt. And so I walked in here with a lot of damage, a lot of trauma, with violence in the house and that kind of thing. And I hated those words. I hated the words like when people say abuse or trauma. I equated those being weak and stuff like that. Tied to these kind of things. And so I didn't talk to anybody about that kind of stuff. And then when we got to the inventory, we started looking at the ideas I walked in here with. And my sponsor started picking these things apart. And he was like, so what's this over here? Because he knew my story a little bit. He started asking me some questions. And at that point, we're really looking at, the ideas. Like I had one of these things on my inventory that I wrote out there that I said, people who drive by and stare at you with that effed up attitude. And I was dead serious. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, when people drive by and I'm like, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And I was convinced that everyone was always glaring and staring at me. And I was, every single car that went by, it didn't matter who it was. And he just said, Brendan, how do you know they're staring at you? And I was like, well, I can tell, like every time they're looking at me. He's like, no, stop, just pause for a second. And finally it was like in that moment, there was this little click and I was like, oh, I'm staring at them. And he's like, Eureka. He yelled Eureka. I don't even know if my sponsor knew what that word meant, but it was in the big book. And so he yelled Eureka. And then, we went about our business, but it was pointed out that my whole entire view of the world was 180 degrees off axis, that everything that I was viewing through Brendan's lens was in such a way that it was completely opposite of what the reality was. Everyone was staring at me because I was staring at them. I was engaging them there and they were reflecting it back. I think that's a big part of this emotional sobriety that we talk about, is because I'm literally creating the environment I live in. It's not just feelings. Feelings are just things we have, and there's no right or wrong on that. But the emotions are the dialogue that go on with those feelings. So what I'm creating out there is I'm creating this emotional warfare with everyone. I'm creating emotional warfare with everyone I'm coming in contact with. I can't even walk down a road without, being disturbed to the greatest depths of my core. And I'm ready to fight, and it doesn't matter who it is, I'm ready to go, and so I'm in this constant conflict, and I'm walking in here with this, and I'm wondering why I don't have any peace in my life. I don't have any rest. I'm at constant tension. I'm constantly angry. It's exhausting. It's totally exhausting. And I'm not making this connection though, but when he finally pointed it out with that one piece and several other things on my inventory, this falseness I was walking around with, it started to click that maybe, just maybe, there was a different idea here, and that maybe I had been viewing things completely different. And then rather than drawing these things into my life, maybe there was a different way to look at the world and behave and act. Maybe there was some actual direct action. If this action alone made awareness to me, maybe that was the beginning of something, and truth be told, it was the very beginning of that. In its earliest adolescent period, I would start walking around And, I'm going to meetings, and what I would start to do is after that inventory, we look at 6 and 7, we start looking at our character defects, my judgments. One of the things I tell people all the time, it's like my goal, it came from my sponsor, which a lot of you guys know, Kenny, Ken D in Seattle. But one of the things he told me once years and years ago, it's got to be at least 20 years ago. He said, Brendan, my goal is to be in any AA meeting, listen to anything anyone shares, and be completely undisturbed. And I smiled and I chuckled because I don't think I've even achieved that today. I'm 28 years sober. I'll be 29 next month if I make it to October 18th. But I have not achieved that, where I still, I'll sit in meetings every once in a while, I hear something like, oh, that actually happened to me a few weeks ago, but I was taught that if I'm in a meeting and I don't hear a message of Alcoholics Anonymous, that it's my job to stand up and not to side talk anybody or anything, but just to share my experience. And so I wasn't making any friends the other night at this meeting that I was at, but I gave a message of Alcoholics Anonymous. So at least maybe if there's somebody new, they would know that there's a way out and a way which they can recover. So one of the things I wanted to look at in here was there's a piece in the 12 and 12, and I'm going to go over a little bit different things than I did the first time because I just got quiet and I thought what came up. And one of the fundamental ideas in this that Bill wrote on actually in other literature, he wrote on it actually in the Big Book and in the 12 and 12, but in the 12 and 12, which I don't use the 12 and 12 a lot, I mainly stick to the Big Book, but there was a section here on step 11. On page 98, it says, there's a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit, but when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of that ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom, and we will be comforted and assured that our own destiny in that realm will be secured for so long as we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our Creator, our own Creator. As we have seen, self-searching is the means by which we bring new vision, action, and grace to bear upon the dark and negative side of our natures. It is a step in the development of that kind of humility that makes it possible for us to receive God's help. It is only a step. We will want to go further. We will want the good that is in us all, even in the worst of us, to flower and to grow. Most certainly we shall need bracing air and an abundance of food. But first of all, we shall want sunlight. Nothing much can grow in the dark. Meditation is our step out into the sun. How then shall we meditate? So he talks a little bit about the three elements there that we're talking about. Self-examination, that's why I began with inventory, because until I see what the problem is, until I know that there's something, where I'm suffering from this emotional adolescence, and I'm reaching for these things I've been kind of trained, like Pavlov's dog, to reach for security, I can't begin to even go on a different path. So I'm doing a self-examination, and Bill talked about it in there where he's talking about each time we go through, we have these disturbing emotions, tracking that down, trying to do the self-examination, trying to look a little bit deeper, a little bit further, trying to see what is within us that's causing this disturbance. What dependency do I have upon my environment towards the outcome? The result, what am I looking for? What am I trying to be attached to? My attachments, what's going on? So I'm doing the self-examination, and then I can take that, and it doesn't even say that, maybe I'm going to get this aha moment, I'm just going to write it, and that's the key, and then I see it, and that's the end. That's where I think, I think we fall off a little bit there. But what happens is I take that into my meditation, and it means like when we pause, when we're agitated or doubtful, I have sometimes had to pause on things and decisions for 6 months. No joke. There was the longest decision one of the longest pauses I had in my life was about 6 months. And I did that diligently. I did not get an answer. I kept calm. I went about it methodically. I just went, okay, the answer is going to come when the answer comes. And it was literally about 6 months. And this was a difficult one. Some of you know my background in education, but I went to University of Washington, and I graduated with a degree in cell and molecular biology and English creative writing. So I did 2 degrees simultaneously, a bunch of extra science classes because I didn't have a pre-med degree. And so my decision for 6 months, I was looking at, am I going to go on to med school or not? Am I going to take the MCATs or not? And I ultimately, I'm not a doctor today, so there's the end of that. I decided not to pursue that further from that point. And that was a difficult decision, but it took me about 6 months to get to that ultimate decision. That was a big, weighty one. And You know, that one came about finally. But there are the simple disturbances I have. And for me, like, I started from a point where for me to even drive down the road used to be difficult. And what I mean by that is that I would interact with people on the road that weren't trying to interact with Brendan. Like, I would be going down the road and somebody would, you know, cut me off or something would happen and I would fly off the handle. Right. I'd reach back for those tools that I used to have, and I would drive like a complete maniac. Even to this day, if I feel disturbed or something happens, I put myself what I call a spiritual timeout. I put myself, move all the way to the far right lane, and I get in the slow traffic and I sit there and I let everyone pass by that I just maybe have passed, whatever. Right. I kind of do like a little timeout. You know, I got kids, but it works, you know, and I deny my ego. I deny that reaction. Reality. Now, that's a rare occurrence that even happens ever today. I can't say it never happens, because occasionally, you know, I'll be in a rush, I'll get somewhere and I'm like, you're driving like a jerk. And so I'll put myself in timeout. And I wanted to point that out because, you know, this thing doesn't come automatically. And I'm glad that Bill wrote this years sober, you know, because I think we have this belief, we come in here and we think, you know, if we just do the steps and we do this thing, and we do have this incredible, powerful, you know, awakening. And that was my experience where I had a shift, you know, like it talks about, you know, just this absolute, complete to my core, complete shift. But it was just enough to kind of knock me loose, you know, and it wasn't where I'm at today. It was just enough to kind of get me on the road, but pointed in the right direction. And it was with some good sponsorship that kind of encouraged me to kind of go further. You know, I wrote subsequent 4 steps and subsequent inventories and took that into prayer and meditation and did some other things. And I should mention that I had to seek some outside help. I think that, you know, we don't talk about that also, is that I did have to seek some outside help for some of that family stuff and all that, and, you know, and go through that. And I will tell this story. I was about 6 or 7 years sober. And so up until this point, I've been doing pretty good. I haven't been in a fight forever. I honestly haven't been in physical altercation since I got sober. I was sober my last altercation. That's one. Actually, it's funny. I moved in where I'm at now. I moved in this condo directly out my door. I can look at Kenmore Lanes, this bowling alley. That was my last fist fight. I just realized that was in 1991. And he said something to my girlfriend, and I did not react in a very good way. And I beat the ever living hell out of this guy. And then I left. And then I you know what happened after that? The reason I tell a story is I sobbed and I cried for hours. It was the first time in my life where I had done something kind of like what I had done when I was out there, you know, getting drunk and drugging, and I couldn't stop the emotions and the feelings, and it brought up all this stuff. And all I knew is that I never wanted to hurt another person as long as I lived. I made this pact with God. I said, if you will help me, you'll keep me safe and protected here. If we can continue on with this, like, God, I don't want to get drunk. I don't ever want to feel like this again. And I said, I will do your will. And I made a pact with God that night. I said, I will do whatever you want. Please just, please just forgive me for this. And I was really remorseful. It was the first time where I realized that some shift had happened, because before I was completely devoid of feeling and whatever. I was completely shut off, to the point where actually I believed that one night I was out in my garage and I thought that I had this great idea that what I needed was an emotional release, because I was so pent up. That was my problem with drinking and drugging, is that I could not, my real issue was that I was alcoholic and something else. I was convinced that all this emotional stuff that was going on, that this deadness within me, that I was getting concerned. I couldn't remember the last time I cried. So I tried to make myself cry. And I started to punch myself in the face, sitting down in the back steps. And if you've ever done that, it doesn't work very well. Your muscles are built to punch outwards. And so I'm trying to punch myself in the face, and all it did was get me bloody gums and piss me off, you know? And so that wasn't the solution. But after that night, that last fight, you know, I continued on with this path. And that's when I went into the, you know, second, third step, the inventory and all that, got to the other side. And, you know, started realizing as I'm going through this, that, you know, I wasn't getting, like I said, instantly overnight better. It's taken years of walking this and trying to do this self-examination constantly. And my first sponsor, John, who approached me, he said these 2 words. He said, Brendan, this is about being persistent and consistent. And he kept saying that over and over. I mean, that guy said that to me, I don't know how many times. He just kept saying, it's persistent and consistent, Brendan. That was with meetings, that was with prayer meditation, that was with doing 10-step inventories for the day, 11-step review at night, getting up in the morning, doing the meditation. And we'd sit down, and every week I'd sit down with him and he'd say, okay, he'd call it 777. And he'd say, okay, I want to see have you done your 7 morning meditations, your 7 evening reviews, and 7 amends? That was my sponsor's requirement. He said 7, 7, 7. You could do 2 letters. You had to do 5, at least 5 in-person amends and 2 letters. But our requirement was 7. So we called it the 777. So John, every week we'd be there with about 5 other guys, and we would all do it. We were all staying sober. But it was this deliberate activity. And this is where the self-will comes in, like we get this confusion about what's self-will and God's will and this stuff. And so when I started applying my will and aligning it with God and trying to take this deliberate action to try to, live differently. And when these things started to crop up, what I started to notice is as I'm making my amends, I'm starting to get the real story from people. And I'm starting to have an emotional discussion with these people where they're telling me what really happened, how it really made them feel. And I have to sit there and listen to this and realize that the story of what really happened is much different than what my mind's remembering. And that relates directly to the emotional sobriety, because I often will believe and think that the reality of the world is much different than it is. What's really happening, what people are thinking. I used to sit in meetings, and it didn't matter where it was. I actually had to make amends to a bunch of people I just walked up to and punched in the face for no reason. But at the time, I thought there was a reason, because I would sit in meetings and I would sit there and I'd be like, that guy looked at me. It was that same thing. I was creating this thing, this hostility. And so, I think a lot of people believe that, we have this belief that, something in the outside hits our consciousness or unconsciousness and creates this reality. In the spiritual life, it's the direct opposite of that. It's the reality of my consciousness and my belief and my unconsciousness of what's going on there that creates the reality that I see. So when I started to shift, and that started to shift within me, inside Brendan, one of my mind and my ideas and all the beliefs that I started to live upon. And it talked about the spiritual principles in this book, about absolute honesty, talked about integrity, talking about helping others, being of service, loving, kindness, compassionate, a real tolerance of others and their shortcomings, and trying to, live in a way towards them which would reflect back to you. You're not trying to do it like a treat, like, hey, if I treat you nice, you got to treat me nice. It was treating them nice, like Bill wrote about there, with the true intent of St. Francis prayer of like, no thought of return on your part. Can you truly love another without any thought or of return on that end? And so that helped me a lot with people that would come in, and I started having compassion for people. I started having this completely new experience in the world where when I was driving down the road, my first thought wasn't, this guy, I see him coming up, he's trying to do this, and I would laugh at myself. I would start having these conversations in my head of like, Brendan, this guy didn't wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to screw with Brendan today on the freeway. And then I started just cracking up, realizing how insane that reality really was. And I'd back up and let people over. it was funny. It was like, then of course I'm congratulating myself for just being a decent human being and being like, wow, you let somebody over. Great job, dude. How about we celebrate my neighbor next door who never stole, robbed, did anything. He has no police record. I want to congratulate myself on the back for just being a decent human being, but it did feel good, when I started living that way, where I started to, react in this world, with like everybody else, God forbid we're normal. God forbid we're just the people, a worker among workers, like they say, like, can I just be another person out there walking on the street? Because my ego wants to be either the best or the worst. We've all heard that before, right? It's like, that's the part where can I just be out there unrecognized, just being able to contribute, make a contribution in this world? Do I need to take credit? Do I have to have that? Do I need to do that to make myself feel okay? Am I putting my demands upon the world, like it talked about in that reading? Do I need to put that upon the world so that I can feel okay? And so I started to move to this part where, through my sobriety, where I was starting to have longer and longer moments where I wasn't acting the way I used to act. And I was starting to see it as I'm driving down the road. And I use that a lot because there was a lot of problems in my story with that, which we don't have time to get into. I could say one of the moments where it really became apparent that there was a shift in me. was when I was driving along one night, and I used to, I mean, I can't tell you how angry I used to be, but this guy was riding my tail end, and it was like 12:30 at night. It was after midnight. I'm just Brendan, stay calm. I can't even see his license plate. I'm like, there's nobody around. There's literally nobody on the street. I'm like, just maybe he's in a rush, don't get a ticket. You're in your hometown. They would love to pull you over, get you a ticket. But I was still kind of on their radar. They were still looking for me to some extent. So I turn around the corner. It's a one way with 4 lanes, and he pulls all the way over, and he's following right on my tail. And there's 3 other lanes to go around me. And I'm like, stay calm, Brendan. I'm talking to God. Everything's good. I'm praying. I'm doing everything I can. I'm trying to. And then we get up to the left-hand turn, and he pulls around me really quick. I'm like, finally. And then he pulls right in front of me, slams his brakes. So I got to slam my brake, make a reverse move so I don't slam into him. And that's when the old tape came back, and I lost it. And I'm like 3 years sober. And I freaking just popped that clutch, and I started chasing this guy through town about 80 miles an hour in downtown Redmond. And if you don't know Redmond, it's Microsoft headquarters. There's about 7 police to every individual. They are well funded. And we went through that town about 80 miles an hour. I chased him all the way out of town, and I'm looking at him with the light on going, I'm going to kill you, like this, just going like this in the mirror. And he's looking at me scared. He's going, oh, the wrong psycho, and we're leaving town. And all of a sudden this thought occurs in my head, this voice comes in. And I don't believe this voice would have entered my head if I hadn't done all the work up until this point. I don't think it would have been there. If I hadn't been doing prayer and meditation, if I hadn't been doing inventories, spot inventories, doing 10-step, doing 11-step, trying to do this practice, and suddenly this is where the shift began. I remember that night, this was the beginning of it all, as I was leaving out towards Fall City, and all of a sudden this voice just in my head, it wasn't loud, it was just this quiet little, just persistent voice. It just, this little thing cried out loud, like it talks about, it just said, what are you doing? But it wasn't like a angry or accusing. It was just this voice in my, and I was just like, whoa. And all this anger just left me. And I let off my gas. I put in the clutch. I let him drift away. I got in the left lane, turn lane. I turned left with this neighborhood, and I went 25 miles an hour, the speed limit, all the way home. And I pulled in my driveway, and I just shook my head. And I was done. I don't want to live that way anymore. I just don't want to live this way anymore. It became too painful to live like that. And then, with Bill's writing, I think, he talks, it's just, this is my experience where he talks about like, this is the next frontier. This is the next thing we're looking at. Right. Some people are calling it, recovery part 2, like you get physically sober, and then this part has to come up, right? We have to do something here. And, I have had great emotional upheaval since then. I don't want to make it sound like, that was it. And then I recovered, and I'm good, and I'm just like this saint now. I've gone through, loss of jobs. This last couple years were really heavy. I lost my mom. I just lost my dog. I had to put my dog down. I got her ashes. I just got them back. They're in there. My girls and I are gonna put her, on her favorite beach, and spread her ashes. And then, I'm looking at back surgery still. They still are jerking me around on that. I've already had one from an auto accident and waiting for a second one. And I got all this stuff that's like on the outside, just like coming at me, and I got a lot of issues there. Work's not too happy. Luckily I got money from my mom's estate, or I'd be in a lot of trouble right now, because I still haven't had any money from the work or insurance or any of those people that are supposed to be apparently paying me since July. So I'm lucky there, but when these things are happening and I'm feeling disturbed, what my solution now is, I don't have these great disturbances like I did before. I don't get angry and mad. I don't try to take activity and action that's going to create, further problems. Like I said, pause. I don't know the answer to some of the things and the problems I'm looking at right now. I know that with my divorce, I walked through that, and my instructions were to take the high road. And I did, and my sponsor said, do not try to defend yourself whatsoever, whatever, like, don't try. And so that was my instructions. So I did, I had to practice that. And then of course I'd go home, on the way home, I'd be yelling at God, like, I'm 20, whatever years sober. Are you effing kidding me? Like it's his fault or something. Right. And like 10 seconds later, I'm like, all right, I'm sorry, God, and that was I believe in a full relationship with God. I talk to God like he's sitting right next to me, because I believe God is with me. I believe God's in every man, woman, and child. I believe that to the depths of my soul, just like that book talks about. In fact, I'm going to read that section right now. This is one of my favorite pieces in here. And I read it last time, actually, I believe, because it really is one of my favorites. It says in We Agnostics, which is probably my favorite chapter in here. It says, we finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feelings we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. The last analysis is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. We can only clear the ground a bit. For testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself. And if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. So I believe that attitude, and the reason I always read that is because it talks about the attitude. That attitude is key. And my grandfather was the first one sober in our family, gave us these, he had these cards, he hadn't sent them, but he was going to give them to us. It said the attitude, the God-given gift within us that helps us to survive. And I was always confused by that. When I read, I understood that with the correct attitude towards this spiritual life, or the correct attitude towards this spiritual work, and trying to take that deliberate action, I might live a different life. You know, I might live differently, where I don't have to be victimized. Bill uses the word victimized by this, but I think self-victimization, maybe self before that, might be more accurate, because we're creating the victimhood of ourselves by these false beliefs and ideas and bringing this upon ourselves. And then, you know, with my, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, with my family. Like I said, you know, I grew up in a lot of violence. So where that comes full force now is my father. Last night I saw him at my brother Brian's house, and we were celebrating my great nephews. I have great nephews. Their birthday of 3 and 4 now. And, you know, my dad came all the way up, and he made a great effort. And that used to always be a very big piece. That was always a constant conflict in my life. And if there are people like that you struggle with in your life, I can tell you from my experience that the only thing that ever came about for me on that was years and years of writing inventories. He was always on that inventory. Why is he always on my inventory? He's always on my inventory. He's just always coming up. And I'd see something and I'd forgive him. I did the Marianne Williamson, Surround You with the Light. I did the Emmett Fox, I Forgive You Forever, you know, and with finality and all that. And, you know, it's like this magic wishing like it was just going to go away, you know, and that stuff is powerful and it really does work if you're at the point where that's going to happen. But the problem was that where the reason that wasn't working was because I was still tethered to the idea. And I think this is where that emotional sobriety especially is, that I'm still tethered to the idea that my dad is going to act and show up and behave in a way which I expect, or I think is, you know, I'm demanding it of him. But at the moment, I don't see that. What I see it as is any father should show up like X, Y, Z. That's my definition I walk around with. If you're not a father that shows up like that, then there's something wrong with you and you're a piece of crap, right? And so I'm walking around with that idea about my dad. And it was Mike L. From Indianapolis. We're washing dishes at the kitchen at Indianola Retreat. Some of you have been there. You know, we're doing that. Never pass up an opportunity to wash mugs. And I was sitting there and he said, well, it sounds pretty easy, Brendan. You need a new idea around your dad. And this is part of that thing that Bill was talking about and that we're talking about here tonight, is that I needed a new idea, not, you know, and that's written in our sex inventory area, but that's true about all sorts of relationships in my life, whether there's, you know, and we're talking about just any personal relationships in my life, that I need a whole new idea around you, around everybody that I come in contact with. Because when I walk in and I have an idea about you, or perceived idea, then you're tethered to that. And I haven't even told you the blueprint. And then when you violate that agreement that I've made up in my mind, then I'm offended and I get pissed and I act accordingly. And it feels like it's unconscious. Like I just don't understand. And I'm looking like going, what a jerk. You know, I can't believe she did that or that. It's like, rather than having this compassionate view of like, you know what? So when I saw my dad last night, I was like, you know what? My dad, it surprises all he was there. But he's showing up, you know, and that's rare, but I had to let go of that idea whatsoever, that expectation. I had to let go of expectations of all the other people, including my father and things like that. So he's going to show up however he decides to show up. That was the other piece he told me. He said, and you don't get to say what that new idea looks like. You need to turn it over completely and let God show you how he's supposed to show up in your life. And so what I realized today is using the example of my dad, is that, you know, I don't know what happened to him to create him and make him the way he is. He doesn't really show up for anything. You know, he hasn't really been to any kids' birthday parties, you know, the grandkids or any of that. And it makes me sad. that he's missing out on that, but I'm not angry about it anymore, and I realized that definition I carried around with on my heart of what that father would be is that's what God put on my heart and how I am towards my girls. My girls have never seen me drunk. They've never seen me, throw somebody down the stairs or, like my brothers that I used to do, or throw off the balcony or out the window or throw knives at each other or bats or any of that. No weapons involved whatsoever. They've never seen any of that. All they know is that I'm there when I say I'm going to be there. They see that. And they see me react in this world when I'm driving with them. They don't see me freaking out on the road. I'm not passing on, because I believe this emotional sobriety is so important, not just for ourselves. I think this is fundamentally important because we have the power to affect the entire world. Just as much as when our selfish actions out there and violence and things that we create, or driving drunk or whatever you want to say, the disappointment and the anxiety and the depression we create in our families around, I believe that the opposite is also true, and even more so, that I have the chance and the ability, if I follow this, if I take care, if I treat Brendan, with these spiritual principles, and I do the things I need to do to shift my consciousness and my unconsciousness, to untether the people in my life and the situations and my demands upon the world and activities around me. If I can untether from that, I can set you free, just like in our amends when we're setting them free. We can do this conscious activity of every night when we go to bed, forgive everyone for anything, whatever it is. I forgive all people from any, do the whole, clearing the slate every day. I forgive anything and everyone, because I want, whatever I've done out there, if it's been perceived, I hope I would have the same reflected back to me, and so my girls get to grow up and they don't have to have that historical trauma or, historical stuff tied to their experience where they grow up with that messed up version of the world, that they can grow up in a totally different experience than I did. I get to shift my family's future because I am not going to pass that on, because I've had that emotional well-being or emotional security, whatever you want to say there, but that emotional sobriety, I've been able to get to that point where, and that's just where I'm at now. Now I'm not 100%, like I already said, and that's not to disparage the work I've already done, because I've come a long, long ways. But my ultimate goal is still, like Kenny said to me all those years ago, that I'm trying to be able to sit in a meeting or anywhere and be completely undisturbed no matter what somebody says or does. And the environment we're in right now, I think it's pretty easy to see that a lot of people are having difficulty with that principle. I'm getting really disturbed and upset by a lot of things. I'm trying to keep calm and not react to certain things in our world that are happening out there. And I will add one other thing it's kind of a funny story, but to kind of wrap it up here is that, I've also had these, my mind plays great tricks on me. And what I mean by that is sometimes left to my own, and it comes across as I'm trying to figure out, my mind's always active and I'm always thinking, right? I'm always thinking. I'm trying to find the solution. I'm trying to find the answer, even when I'm just trying to get quiet a lot of times. It takes a lot of work for me to get quiet and let that kind of happen, and get to that point. But one of the things that my mind came up with one day is I went to Kenny and I said, I figured it out, Kenny. And this is about 7 years sober, I think. And I just asked sponsor, I said, I figured it out, Kenny. And I was dead. By the way, I'm not joking at all. We met at 7 a.m. on Tuesdays. I think this morning was even earlier. He had to go to work early. So I was meeting him even earlier. Sometimes we met at 6. And so we're there. He's in his pajamas. We're drinking coffee. I said, you know what? And I was dead serious. I was kind of somber. I said, look, I've done inventories. I've done counseling. I've done all this stuff. And, I've done the step work around this stuff and, relationships and all this stuff. And I think, Kenny, I think I need to find some help. I think I have some advanced problems. And I said that with a dead face. I was dead serious. I said, I have advanced problems. And Kenny he fell. He did fall out of his chair. He was laughing so hard. But he sat there and realized I was dead serious, and he fell out of his chair and he goes, oh yeah, that's it, Brendan. God can solve the age-old problem, alcoholism, but Brendan's got some advanced problems, and he started laughing so hard, Shannon woke up, and then she started coming down. What's going on? And he tells her, and she's dying laughing. And, left to my own, that's the best I come up with, is that I have some advanced problems. And, and the reality is we all have problems, right? We all have things that come up, but I have never found something where literally if I can take these spiritual principles and I can apply them in my life, and I could get quiet and I can focus on the fundamental idea that, God is conspiring for me and my happiness and my success. I can stop worrying about all those things and where I'm going, where I'm headed, what I'm doing. So then it allows me to just show up fully and be present, because that's the only place I can experience God. Because when I'm doing that advanced problems and thinking about, like punching myself in the face or thinking about that guy and what he was trying to do, or my dad and all that, is what I'm doing is I'm projecting, the consciousness of what's going on in here. I'm projecting that out and it's being reflected back, and I'm living a reality when I do that is very uncomfortable, very painful, and just quite frankly leads to more difficulty and more drinking. But since I've been able to let go of that and do my own work and focus on this, I've been able to have a totally different life. I am going this weekend with my girls. We're going on a little vacation, and that literally that's the highlight of my life right now, is those two little girls right now. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, but I'm showing up 100% fully, and we're gonna have a great weekend. We'll see, but that's where I'm at. I want to thank you guys for being here, for taking the time to listen to me talk for a while. And like I said, you missed the first time when it wasn't recorded. That was the best one ever, and this is like the 27th. So thank you guys. Good to see you, family.
Hey man, thank you, Brendan. Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you saying what's up. Oh yeah,
you made it.
I made it, bro. I was hauling butt from my daughter. She's cheerleading in this football game and got all this family around. And I was last week. I was in your neck of the woods, and we made it to the San Juans. That's
where I'm going. I'm going to Orcas Island.
Oh yeah, we just got back from Orcas Island. It was awesome.
I know, that's where we're going this weekend. Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I really enjoyed what you had to share. Thank you so much. And I really like the idea of like, how is my emotional sobriety, my vibrations affecting the rest of the world? Like, how am I showing up? Like, that makes a difference, not just in a negative way, but how am I bringing as much peace as I can bring to people around me? Am I bringing as much stability, or am I just bringing anxiety? You can tell when somebody's really afraid. You can tell when I'm real freaked out and coming up with a solution. You know what I'm saying? Especially when I'm a group of people. If I haven't given it any pause and I start to go, okay, this is what we need to do, it's going to be a problem. So anyway, well, hey, kind of the way we've been doing this is just maybe you could pick a couple people and then we'll open it up, Brendan. So okay. You know a lot of people on here. Is there anybody you'd like to hear from?
I do love a lot of people on here, so that's very difficult for me to pick on people.
Kick it off to 3 or 4.
You know who I'm gonna pick on? Someone that probably thinks I'm not gonna pick on them. But I'd like to hear from my friend Wendy.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Wendy.
I knew you were going to pick on me. Thanks, Brendan. Wendy White, alcoholic from Astoria, Oregon. Northwest Spots is my conference, my home conference. It's where I met Brendan many years ago. And he's one of my favorites in this program. He's the hero. Thanks for sharing what you did, and I echo what Sam said. The outside is just the reflection of the inside, and we create our own reality. And one of the things that I love about step 11, which you referred to a little bit later on in the essay, he says, let's always remember that meditation is in reality intensely practical. One of its first fruits is emotional balance. And that to me is what emotional sobriety is this emotional balance, meaning that there's a balance between my inside and the outside, that there's recognition that I'm not letting things outside of me rile me up, and I'm not taking the things that are inside of me and demanding that the outside deal with. I love that our program focuses on the spiritual growth first. When we straighten out spiritually, the rest follows. And that's where I have to keep my focus. I have to have a practice. I have to have some ritual, that keeps my attention, that keeps my focus going. And this program provides that. This program provides me the reason to get up in the morning and ask God for guidance. It gives me the reason when I go to bed at night to review my day. It gives me the reason to watch for those things that are going to crop up and how to deal with them. It's all provided right there. But yeah, I'm with you. I have advanced problems too. There was a guy that used to come to my home group who was a really bad alcoholic. He used to get on the train and who knows where he'd show up, but he showed up at our meeting once and he said, yeah, I can complicate a crowbar. And that's what we do. We complicate crowbars. And I really need this program, not just for my drinking, but for everything else. And it feels really good to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, even though this is the emotional sobriety workshop, I know. But it's great to see all of my heroes here in this place. So thanks for calling on me, Brendan. This thing works. I'm going to keep coming back.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks. Sorry, Glenn, you want me to call one more?
Yeah, I will call you two more. I want you to call on two more.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't pass up the opportunity to hear that sweet New Zealand voice. How about it, Kate?
Oh, yeah.
I knew you were going to do that. Kate, I'm an alcoholic. He's going to be sorry he called on me because I was thinking, I think we've had 32 of these, and I think that was the 32nd best one I've heard. So anyway, no, that was great. Seriously, Brendan, it's really good to see you. And I loved what you were talking about tonight about your relationship with your father. And my experience is exactly the same. It's like those people that show up again and again and again on my inventory. And I can remember having one several years ago, and my sponsor said to me, well, write inventory. And I was so angry at the time. And I'm like, no, I'll just pull out one of the other 10 I've written. I'm not writing another inventory, on the same thing. And what I had to really take a look at was exactly what you were talking about. What old idea am I not willing to give up? Because how I am is I was forcing that person like you to show up in the way that I demanded they showed up. And I was unwilling to compromise. And what I do is I go after that, then I might back off for a little while, and then I'll come at it again, And the principles that I came, here with were certainly not, the spiritual principles that we try to practice. My principles are more like, if it doesn't fit, force it, and, that doesn't work great. I just, FYI, in case you're wondering, but I had to be willing to look at getting a new idea around that entire situation, and when I was willing to surrender my position on it, the instant freedom came to the point today where that person or others that can show up like that for the majority of the time doesn't bother me. So I love seeing you, loved hearing you share, and I hope you have a great weekend with your beautiful little girls this weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Appreciate it. Always good to see you. Okay. Hey, Kurt, how you doing, buddy? It's been a long time.
Thanks a lot for your talk. Yeah, I want to roll with that same idea that you said. I'm Kurt, alcoholic, and this had to do with my former wife. Rhonda, you know, I went out at 19 years and she left. And I was so pissed off that she fucked everything up. She left. I mean, what, you know, now I've been arrested. I don't know how many times. I've been in 5150. I've been sent to treatment. You know, we had the police at the house. I don't know how many times. And well, what? She left. She ruined everything. I mean, I had that idea. And I mean, that was the lens I was looking through. And the new view that came, it didn't come from writing inventory. It came from the surrender experience that released me from drinking. And I saw, oh my God, she saved her life. She moved because she was saving her life. And we've talked about this, and it's really funny because I said to her one time, I said, you know, you did me a tremendous favor by leaving. And she said, if you know Rhonda, she goes, I didn't do it for you. And I mean, you know, because we can laugh at that now, right? And I said, but you gave me a tremendous gift. And I did not produce the view. And how I say that now is, you know, I see a lot of guys writing inventory over and over and over on the same thing. And my question to them is, I want to know who's writing this inventory. Who keeps writing this inventory? It ain't you. You're the one that's in conflict with this thing happening over and over. Who's this self that keeps writing this same thing? And but you brought that up. I was thinking about that when you were talking. I thought, oh my God, that's exactly, you know, was our experience. And I need a new view. That's the whole point of this thing. I have an obscured view, and I don't know it. I do not know it until I put the glasses on, how obscured my view is. I can't know how obscured my view is from this lens. It's only when I had glasses where I could see clearly, meaning AKA a new outlook, that I had any clarity. And I finally understood what the first step principle meant. The first step principle meant not honesty, like, oh, you give me $5 back, but honesty in the sense I have a complete inability when I'm in self to have any clarity at all, any truth. I cannot see truthfully. And I love the way you put that in there with, you know, Rohr says, oh, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. So that's all I got. Thanks, Brendan. It's good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks so much, Kurt. Hey, at this point, we'll open it up. Would anybody like to raise their hand? Just raise your hand in the participant box, and we'll call on you. And you can go over into the more part of the screen and go down to raise hand. There's a button that you can put on there if you want to raise your hand. Okay, Sarah. Sarah H.
Hi, everyone. Sarah, alcoholic.
Hey, Sarah.
Oh, my God. That was amazing, Brendan. There was so much stuff I got out of that. And you know, I mean, in stuff that I saw just worded a little differently. Like, you know, you had talked about the emotional, not being emotionally invested in stuff. And I've spent my entire life not being an emotional participant in anything. You know, I don't know when that started, you know, and even with inventory, I can't really pinpoint when that started. I just know that for some reason, I didn't invest. I didn't put my emotions into everything. I didn't put my emotions into anything. And prior to sobriety, I can count on one hand the number of times that I was actually an emotional participant in things. And, you know, so that was one of the things that really struck out at me. And then what sobriety has allowed me to do is that emotional participancy has led me to emotional sobriety, that I actually invest and put my heart into things, not just my head. And so there's a big difference there. and the way we create the world, you know, that and the demands that we have. I know that for me, expectations are premeditated resentments. And if I'm having expectations and demands on you, and you're supposed to be reading my mind, and you're supposed to know exactly what I want and when I want it, and you're supposed to do that for me. And if you don't, then it's your fault. Then I'm not happy, you know. But then I can't do that, because if I have those kind of expectations, I'm never happy, because my happiness becomes somebody else's responsibility and they never get it right. So I had to take that back I had to surrender to that. I had to finally surrender to that. One of the things I just really wanted to share that you had helped me kind of see again was one of my biggest resentments or angers or whatever you want to call it was to my stepmother. Epitome of a cruel and evil stepmother. Lot of trouble there. And when my dad died, and my husband and I took her out to lunch, and now I was a wild child, and I know that I was a full-blown alcoholic when she met me. So, and that was at 14, 15 years old. So, I mean, I know that I gave her a lot of hell, but we were sitting there, we took her out to lunch. In 3 weeks, she had lost her mother, her brother, and her husband. And this was a woman that I thought I hated. And so we were sitting there having lunch, and the subject of came up, and she kind of pretty much pointed out what a shit I was all my life, what a shit I had been, and how hard it had been. And in that moment, my husband got up and went out to smoke a cigarette. And that moment, I owned every single bit of that. And it was one of those things that what led me to the emotional sobriety there was the forgiveness. And that was giving up the hope that the past could be any different. I can't live in that crap anymore. And I have to own my part of that. And I did. And I owned every bit of it and made amends with her. And it didn't take but a couple of minutes. And then what happened was I started going back every year to visit my family, because I was still making the living amends to them. So I go back every year, and every year I take my stepmother out to lunch or spend a day with her. And every year I tell her I love her. And I still can't stand the woman, but I can tell her I love her, and I can mean that. And I can love her with all my heart and soul, and treat her with dignity and respect, and let her know that she is loved, and let her know that she is a worthwhile human being, and that and let her know that we don't have that anger anymore and that resentment. You know, I can treat her that way. And that's thanks to you guys, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself and letting me have that. And it starts with surrender and willingness. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, a lot of times when people just have a bomb share like that, people don't want to raise their hand, you know? So then you got to just start picking on people. And I was going to.
Sorry, Sam, I muted you. I didn't mean to do that.
I was just saying
David got his hand up.
stuff. What I was saying is a lot of times when somebody has a bomb share like that, people don't want to raise their hand. Oh, here we go. I got people. What about David S. from California?
Hi, how are you guys?
Good,
Great.
man. How are you?
Thank you, Brandon, man. I love you, brother. I just went through a piece of work, and this one really rocked my world. My mom has been on my every inventory for almost 30 years now, right? So, this last one a few months ago, man, I got released. And it's, you have no idea how long I've held myself captive in this thing. So now, she's not doing really well. She's got dementia, and it's getting bad. And so, I have to, I'm cooking dinner for her every night, and trying to help out as best I can. You know, and this whole COVID thing was such a blessing for me. And I kind of knew that when it started happening, right? And I said, you know, this was, that was kind of like the first thing I thought of, was like, you know, for us to be having these meetings and see everybody, you know, like my friend JP's on here, and, you know, he's in Vietnam, and it's like tomorrow morning, right? So, anyways, this thing with my mom, I mean, I've been going through it for so long, man. And Tom and Juanita knows, I mean, she was the first one that kind of actually kind of started me on this road of man, I don't think I've ever felt this free before, at least not with the voices going off my head. And so yeah, I've been really freed up, man, and it's really, you know, and I saw this with a lot of people, you know, they have problems with mom or dad or something like that. But I mean, you know, I've written, I don't know, 14 inventories, and she's always been number one. And, you know, the first one she had, I don't know, I had 50 resentments with her or something like that. It's insane. But it kind of shows me that, you know, how infinite God's love really is. And it's given me total new meaning for a lot of things. Especially, well, for me, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but for a long time, you know, one of the biggest things for me that I saw from my childhood is because I started putting on my armor very early. You know, I started hiding from my fears when I was really, really, really young. And I did not let anybody in for a very, very long time. And I saw that this time, and it fucking fucked me up. That's what it did, and I needed it. And you know, I don't mean to say foul language, but that's just, it works better for me. But I saw some depth that I'd never seen before in any of the inventories, and the first step was totally different than it had been in you know, because it's always been about alcohol. Not that it's not about alcohol, but you know, I mean, I can say it now. It's been 32 years since I had my last drink, you know, and that's a long time ago. I don't know about you guys, but you know, that's a long time ago. So the first step was a little different this time. It was things I'm trying to stop doing but can't stop doing, and things I want to get done but can't get done. So it's all the things that my current powerlessness is involved with. So, you know, there was a lot of age-old stuff there, you know, behaviors, right? And this time, not to say that I got rid of all those things that were on the list or God was removed them, but I got to the point where I was okay with it. And I think that was the biggest breakthrough for me. Was I always was down on myself, right? So I'll close saying this, and yeah, one of the things that I saw, and I'd seen it with other people's inventory, is if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me, or you wouldn't love me, because of the dark place that I lived in for so long. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. Good to see you, man. Let's see, Jim L. We have Jim L.
That would be me. I'm Jim.
Hey,
Greetings from Palm Springs. I'm Jim Lewis. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jim.
Nice to see you. Wow, Brendan, that was fantastic. What I resist persists. And the outside is a reflection of the inside. How can I be kind to myself and have an authentic experience in recovery? You know, it's it has something to do with what you were talking about, the consistency and persistency. I cannot be consistent if I'm having a self-incriminating relationship with my past or my present or my future. I'm a child of God. This is the way I was made. I'm 68 years old, and I'm grateful to be alive and have that mercy shown to me over and over again. My daughter nearly died when she was 13. And today she's 31 and she's got 16 years of continuous sobriety. And she never saw me drink either. You know, and for that is not only that, but we actually did a big book workshop for 12 weeks about 5 years ago. I'm learning that my father was not the father that I wanted, but thanks to the 4-step, I wasn't the son that he could have either. And so today, I dump all of my stuff into the bucket of mercy and love. And I wish you the only time in my son's childhood that I ever traveled with him alone was we flew from New York to Seattle, and we went up to Orcas Island, and we rode bicycles, and I rented a car and I drove it I backed it right into a tree, and I started crying. And my son was like 7 or 8. Then we went out, we tried to make a barbecue. I failed at that completely, but we did it together. And today, my being a parent and being a father is a complete gift of this program. And I'll have 26 years of continuous sobriety tomorrow. And on the eve of that moment in my life, I can't think of anything more of a gift than to hear you tonight, Brendan. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. We have Kimberly. Kimberly?
Hey, Brendan, I want to thank you for everything you shared. Basically, I think you lived my life. And I never knew how to deal with it. And I am sick of my father being on my inventory time after time. And I too don't know how to deal with violence well, having been thrown across rooms and downstairs and through glass walls and things. And it was just really powerful to hear you talk about those particular circumstances and be really honest about having that. I hate to use the word forbearance particularly, but I thought it was pretty much a good skill set to be able to numb that and to partition that off. And it stands in the way of my relationships with others. And yeah, I definitely over the years of sobriety have had greater times and worse times in terms of that chaoticness. And I love that I get to learn in this particular workshop with these particular amazing people, different skills that I can pick up and breathe with. And I think the personal driving timeout is my new little gift to myself. I might have to use that actually. But I think that what the other thing that was really, what everyone has really shared with me today is that anger doesn't have to come and go in the ways that it has been. It's gotten easier, it's gotten better, it's gotten lesser. That 6 and 7 step work, consistently my sponsor picks it up and we talk about it. And I'm just grateful that you have shared not just about your past, but about the tools you use, specifically Brendan and everyone else here tonight. I am just grateful. I didn't really think I'd get called on, honestly. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Let's see here. We've got, thank you. We've got Liz. Liz, are you available?
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Liz.
Hey, everybody. Man, thank you so much. That was really, really cool. For a long time, I always, that the ability to remain unoffended was like my favorite definition of humility. And I think, like, and I love how you were talking about, you know, what you believe and how you view the world and how powerful that is. And like when I got sober and started, you know, working on my relationship with my higher power, I discovered what I think is the truth, you know, that God loves me more than I could possibly bear to understand. Like, I was allowed to run around and be an asshole in the world for so long, and now I'm sober and I don't want to do that, but I could walk out the door and wreak havoc and God would still love me just as much. And I think that kind of stops me dead in my tracks. It's like, oh shit, that, you know, like, you love me now, and if I went out and I did all of that other stuff, you would still love me just as much. And it makes me want to be a better person, you know. It makes me very grateful, and I want that for everybody, right? And I think, you know, when I got sober and I did some work, and I realized that, like, the truth about who I am, who I really am, is not the human condition that I'm dealing with, that I'm a child of God. And all that other stuff is mostly my ego and my character defects. And I believe that because I've experienced that. I've felt the freedom of this program as a child of God, you know, in glimpses, in moments when I feel most like myself because of the work that I'm doing in AA, and because I'm a seeker constantly, you know. I know that that's the truthiest truth about myself as a person. And so I have to believe that that's true for every other person, whether I like the way they're doing it or not. You know, no matter how I feel or what I think about another person, I know that the truth for them is the same for me. I think it's the pure kernel of truth in all of us, that we're children of God and that we're all suffering from the very same human condition here. So with what you were talking about, how do I walk around in this world believing that so much and trusting in God so much and loving that truth so much that I can have the ability to remain unoffended and to treat people like the child of God that I know they are. I fucking know they are, you know. I know that, you know, it's hard. Like, you're talking about being crazy. Like, I catch myself all the time being crazy. I'll come out of my favorite little chapel, you know, after having super zen moments, and get to the red light and somebody cuts me off. I'm like, motherfucker, you know, and then I'm like, oh God, Liz, what are you doing? You know? And I used to beat myself up for that in those moments when I catch myself being human. I used to be like, nope, you're bad, you know? And I would take that moment, which I could use really selfishly, and let my ego grab it and shame me. And it's like, no, when I see myself being a human being, I'm grateful for those moments. Like, wow, I get to see that. I get to see what it is that I'm doing wrong here, you know, and I don't have to be upset about it. I'm grateful for that, because I know a lot of people don't have those moments at all. You know, they're just running around suffering. And, you know, I still do sometimes, but I catch myself. And that's like what we're talking about here. Like, I want to be from the inside out the best version of myself that I can be. And I want that to, you know, I want that to be a reflection for other people too. Because who knows, like, there's really no ceiling to this thing, honestly. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to hear David talk about never feeling so free. That makes my heart swell a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on today. What about JP from Vietnam? Did I meet you on Gary? Didn't we meet on Gary's porch a couple summers ago out in Colorado?
I think last year, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's
And
up,
I
man?
did. Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. And I hope all of you are well. I intended to come this year, but we all know that's impossible. And thank you so much for your share. I think what came up for me was, you know, this idea that somehow I suffer from unconscious emotional programs that I thought I'd gotten rid of, you know, many years ago in all these early inventories. And what I saw in this latest inventory, and especially with, you know, the repeated resentments, I also have an issue with my mother, or let's say I have a lot less issues with my mother today. But what I saw was that, you know, really in the same way that my third column, I had these mental belief systems that I carried around. What I didn't realize was underneath these mental belief systems, there were emotional belief systems that I was carrying around, because I could not explain to myself why I just kept doing the same things over and over again. You know, I mean, I would write inventory about it, I would, you know, make amends about it, and I would still be doing the same things, you know, decades later on, you know, wishing that somehow these behaviors, attitudes would go away. And, you know, and kind of settled for, well, this is the best it's going to get. You know, this is just the way you are. This is the way you're going to die. And every time you go through the steps, you're just going to improve a little bit, you know. And you know, there was huge denial of, you know, of the power of God there. And, you know, what I needed to go through this time, very similar to David, because we shared this, we both went to the same workshop, was somehow, you know, these emotional belief systems, you know, that I picked up as a child, you know, somehow those were really were shown and revealed to me in my fourth and fifth step. You know, I'll give a very silly example because it has nothing to do with logic. And you know, and Brendan was sharing earlier on about you know, always having, well, he wasn't sharing this, but this is how I used to be. I would always have to be right in an AA meeting. My way is right, your way is wrong. I'm just going to tolerate you, right? I'm going to tolerate the you know, your middle of the road AA solution, and I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to be, you know, all this stuff, you know. And I just couldn't shake that. And I've known for decades this is really not a genuine respect for other people's viewpoint, right? But I just couldn't shake it, right? Didn't matter how much I wrote. And what came up in this inventory was actually what was underneath all of that, you know, having to be right, you know, and you having to be wrong, was, you know, me making a mistake when I was around 7. My father caught me making this mistake, and he ran around the apartment chasing me with his hands held high. And I really believed I was going to die. I believed that he was going to kick the shit out of me because I made a mistake. So every time I'm in a situation where it's like I may make a mistake, the only way I can defend myself from that fear is by being right. Right. And this was like, wow, how does this happen? How does it happen that a fear, that an event that happened, you know, 40 years ago, you know, that stuck in me emotionally, get to run my life for 40 years afterwards? And realizing that, I also realized how much more powerless I am, because I can only take that to God. Only God can remove that deep emotional programming that runs my life today, right? And my experience since reading that piece of Fifth Step is, you know, I don't have to be right in AA anymore. I can hear where people are coming from. I can hear that we are all children of God. I can hear that everyone is doing their best, right? I'm not in that constant judgment and chatter anymore. And that has nothing to do with me. You know, that again has to do with this amazing program, you know, that has to do with in some magical and miraculous way, God has filled that fear with him, right? So I really enjoyed what was shared, and I'm loving this this workshop series. It's nice to see a lot of you. Thank you.
Great to hear from you, man. Thank you so much. I was thinking about, is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only he manages well? And so I often ask I'm trying to ask myself, have I dropped that delusion? Like I know that statement really well. I know of that statement, but many times during the day, I'm still living in that delusion. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and I was just talking about every person that I talk to now, it's always about some kind of political thing. It seems like they're always like, did you see this? I mean, every time you turn on the news, no matter what political side you're on, people are like, holy shit, did you see what just happened? Did you see what they're doing? They're torching that shit. I mean, it's like, goddamn Armageddon. Sorry, God. It's like, man, we're like in the end times here, man. Like they're just waiting on, people to start breathing fire. And he goes, yeah, I guess this is just what the best that man can come up with. And I'm like, and I was looking, I was like, oh man, that's right. Like, holy shit, this is what man comes up with. This is what we got to offer when it's just me running the show on self-propulsion, Anyway, I didn't mean to get involved in any controversy. We have a great talk. Sorry for saying GD, love you, God. I'm sorry I said that. And Tom, we got you, you've got an announcement we want to make.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if everyone is aware that it's the FOTS Midwest this weekend starting tomorrow. And Kurt Z, our buddy, is speaking tomorrow night. And Mary T, our dear friend, is speaking Saturday night. And there's other great speakers, and there's step workshops all the way through, I think, Friday and Saturday. I'm not sure if it's on Sunday. I should know, so I just looked at it, but I'm so tired I can't remember. Then the following weekend, October 2nd and 3rd, is my home group, An AA group in Santa Fe. It's our 20th anniversary workshop that we're doing. We're calling it Dos Equis. It's 20 years in 2020. We figured that's an appropriate name for it. And Charlie P., who a lot of you know, Charlie Parker from Austin, and his sponsee, Chad, and his sponsee, Stephen, are all going to do the weekend. They're going to tell their stories on Friday night and then do a workshop all day Saturday. So we really hope that we'll get a lot of our Thursday night family coming to all of those things. So that's it. Thanks.
Hey, and Tom, those are the FOTS Midwest. Do you have, could you post the codes to that into the meeting you were talking about? Those are both Zoom meetings.
Sure, I will.
Yep. Will you post those up there? So this is how we close it, Brendan. We started to close it now where we just mute ourselves, go into our inner room. But before I do that, do you have anything before we go into our inner room? You can come out of your inner room for a second. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we end? Anything you forgot to say, or anything you'd like to add to the?
Well, I'll leave you with one thing, and this is something that to do with Kenny and what he was talking about being undisturbed in any meeting and that kind of thing. Is Dr. Bob wrote this thing. It's humility. It says perpetual quietness of heart is to have no trouble, is never to be fretted or vexed, irritable or sore, to wonder at nothing that is done to me, to feel nothing done against me, is to be at rest when nobody praises me, and when I am blamed or despised, is to have a blessed home in myself where I can go in and shut the door and pray to my Father in secret and be at peace, as in a deep sea of calmness, when all around and about is seeming trouble. Thanks, guys.
All right, that's beautiful. Let's thank you for reading that. I love that. Let's mute ourselves and say the Lord's Prayer in our inner room. And thank you so much, Brendan, and I'll join you right after. Hey, man, thank you. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, everyone. Love you, man.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Love you guys.
Brendan. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, Brendan.
And
Great job, Brendan.
have fun this weekend.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Good to
have a
see
good
you guys.
time, man.
Share.
Bye, family.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brendan.
Hey, Sam.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Sam,
Yeah, what's up, Kurt? Yeah.
Can you,
Um,
do you have a library of these talks?
I
Or
do,
no?
but the problem is that I post them on the Fox Family website, like the link to them. I don't have a place a page to like post them to.
Okay.
So
But
maybe
are they
we'll,
on there?
huh?
They're on that website?
Yeah, they're on the Fox Family Facebook page, you know.
Okay.
So, and if you just search through there, you'll see. And if you want any particular ones, you can just call me or text me or email me, and I'll send them to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam.
Actually, you know, Sam, the other day, I went to the Fox Family website and I saw your name and I clicked on your name and all the recordings came on underneath your name.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow.
Good.
Cool. Thanks, David.
Try that one.
Hey, no problem. We kind of post them a couple days after they happen sometimes because it takes a little while, I guess. So Chris does that for me and sends me an email with them. So.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Love
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you,
should also
Good
thank
night.
Chris because he does such diligent work.
I just got to remember to hit the record button. That's where I screwed up last time with
Thank
Brendan.
you, everybody.
Mhm.
First time he
Bye,
spoke, I
Sam.
just didn't hit the button.
Hey, Tom. How are you? See you tomorrow.
Bobby!
Good to see you, man.
Yeah.
634.
See you, Chris.
So yeah.
Yeah.
You do a fantastic job. I don't know why anyone would say any different. You know, you're bound to miss a record button at least once out of the 6 months we've been doing that.
I didn't hit it today until he started talking about how pissed he was that it didn't record last time. I was like, oh, I better record it this time. He was like, oh, last time I gave the best talk ever and it wasn't recorded. I was like, oh shit, I better record this one.
Nice. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing good, man. Good to see you.
You too.
You good?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
How's Mary Jane? What's she up to?
How's who?
Mary Jane.
Oh, I didn't talk to her this week, but I've been over there twice, and I always have such a great time over there.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. She
Well,
always
get
has
her-
great
get her
stories. And
back
she gave
on
me,
Thursday night. That Sam ought to have her for Thursday night.
I've tried to tell him that I'd have to go over there and host it, but boy, I bet you she'd do a good job.
It'd be great. She'd do really good.
Yeah, I got something to tell you about that. You told me something. She texted me one time, or it told me one time that she didn't want to do as many as she usually did, but we'll get her on.
She said that her talk isn't as good as it used to be. She said sometimes she doesn't have much on her curveball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a spitfire every time I'm over there. So I don't let her fool you for a second.
No, she's great. She's great. Hey, Joel, how are you?
I'm great, Tom. I have a question for you. Does X-Weed, you put down the password, but what times?
What times? I'll send that to you. I'll send you the flyer. And maybe Sam will put the flyer on next week, but I'll send it to you.
Okay, and I passed that along, I'll broadcast.
It's 6 to 9 Mountain Time, and then 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday till 5 Mountain Time with an hour lunch break.
Thanks. Yeah, because that's what screws up my head. I think I'm 1 hour behind you, though.
I think you are. You're Pacific, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. But I'll send you the flyer. I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you very, very, very much. How you been?
Really good. You've been great. Been really good. Yep. So you guys, peace be with you, and I will see you all next week.
Ciao.
So yeah. I'm gonna shut it down. All right.